notes?
Yes, I tried to figure out how to print it, but I just wrote it down.
Oh, okay. I could have emailed it to you. I just thought at that point, it's almost easier to.
No, it's fine. Those are important milestones. And are we going to go next week, Mary? Right?
Next week for
The next number 4.
Monday's a holiday. Do you want to, or do you want to not do it?
It's probably not. I don't know. I mean, I can do it, but I don't know about staff. It's a holiday.
Justin and Lewis, any thoughts on doing this next?
Why don't we just skip a 1 since they completed phase 1? Let's skip and do it in 2 weeks.
Okay.
These guys need their holidays.
Thank you.
I agree with that.
All right, thank you everybody for joining us tonight for the Mountain View Fire Community Workshop number 3. We appreciate your attendance tonight. I'm going to go ahead and kick it off. We have a full agenda this evening, so we want to get rolling, and I'm going to start by handing it over to Supervisor John Peters.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 3rd in a series of community workshops to address the impacts and the recovery from the Mountain View fire, which started, and for the most part, the fire itself ended shortly thereafter on November the 17th, but the recovery began almost as immediately as the fire did. And it will be 8 weeks tomorrow. There has been a tremendous response by the community, locally and at large, with monetary support, lots of clothing and household goods. This continues to just really, I think, overwhelm the community and those, not only those that were directly impacted by the fire, but the entire community, as the entire community really is directly impacted in one way or another. I just want to mention a couple of things. Phase 1, which you all know was the removal of hazardous debris. When we spoke last Monday, the estimate was 2 to 3 weeks. They were able to complete phase 1, the state of California, Saturday. So phase 1 is complete. I think it was 130 plus properties that were assessed and mitigated for hazardous debris. Phase 2, remember, requires a right of entry form, which is available on the website at the general store. If you haven't figured out how to get that right of entry form submitted, or are having problems filling it out, you can contact the EOC, you can contact me directly, and we will help you. The right of entry deadline to submit those forms is going to be February 1st. It's been extended. The goal is to have as much participation as possible. Once those are received, it's scheduled for phase 2. Basically the removal of all other debris on the properties is scheduled to begin on February 2nd. So those are really important dates. The donation center that has been operated, again, almost as soon as, the fire was identified as being so catastrophic and the needs were so many, the Baker family took the lead and charged straight ahead and opened up a donation center. It started at the school, it moved to the tennis courts, it's now at the community center in Walker. And it was scheduled to continue through this month, the month of January. Just today, in speaking with our CAO and our CAO Bob Lawton, the EOC, we are going to sort of take it month by month and extend it to the end of February at this point. Now that may or may not be the last month, but at this point in time, that is the plan. We need to have a plan for the recovery and response to the fire. And I want to thank all those involved in propping up and continuing to operate the donation center. There's lots of ways to find out what's there or make requests for things that may not be there that you or your family may need. I visited it over the weekend, and there were people coming in, according to those operating it, that had not even been there yet. So I think it's encouraging that it's still a very needed resource, and it's being utilized. Tomorrow, at the regular Mono County Board of Supervisors meeting, which begins at 9 a.m., there will be during the recognition part of the agenda, which is at the very, very beginning, there will be a proclamation recognizing the volunteers of the fire response. And this is the first ever Community Spirit Award. We've tried to identify all that we could that were not part of a formal entity, like not part of the fire department or social services, or those of us who just are going to respond regardless of the incident. And so I'm hoping that everybody that can possibly get on their computer or on their phone, or however you can listen in to the Board of Supervisors tomorrow morning, it would really be great if as many people could come on and listen to this recognition. And I want to especially thank Chair Corliss, who was our chair of the board until just last week, who sort of initiated this, really organized it, and made sure that it happened. So she's now Supervisor Corliss again, but our former chair. So I wanted to recognize her and all those who helped work on this. I think it's really important to recognize those that are helping, will continue to help. And with that, I think I'm going to turn it back over to Justin Caparuso and let him moderate the meeting. We want to save time for as many questions as possible, and take it away.
Thank you, Supervisor Peters. Appreciate that intro. Just as a reminder on some administrative items, we will have Q&A at the end of the workshop. So we will address questions towards the end. We ask that you let us get through our presentations, and if a question that you have is not addressed, simply type it into the Q&A down at the bottom of the Zoom screen. Or if you're watching on Facebook Live, I see we already have a question already in there. You can ask questions in there as well. And then there'll also be, as you can see already, links available in the chat. So there's a chat function at the bottom, and we will provide links there. We've already got the link to the portal, as well as Facebook pages for both the incident response as well as the donation center. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Justin Nalder, who is going to give us an incident update.
Okay, thank you. So as Supervisor Peters mentioned, we did finish with phase one, which is the has waste sweep. You may notice if you go out onto your property that some of the items that you thought that they were going to remove from the property are still present, but they have a white marking on them. That's because they were deemed as non-hazardous after inspection. So not to worry at that point. Typically, the process is the phase one is completed. Once we collect the right of entry forms, we begin to submit those to the state. The state will then send out other teams to do preliminary assessments and additional asbestos assessments above and beyond what they had done before. And then comes the heavy groundwork with the equipment and the major cleanup. When we go into this phase two, again, we will prioritize certain properties based on proximity to environmental concerns. And there will be a first and there will be a last. This process will take a little bit longer than phase one, which is to be expected, but we'll keep you updated as we get into that process. We've got somewhere between 55 and 65 ROEs in process right now that we're working through. That's a good amount. So it should be sufficient enough to get Cal OES to commit to the phase two, because there was the possibility that if we didn't get enough response that that perhaps we wouldn't qualify for that, but it's looking good on that end. As far as recovery at the landfill, we are addressing a couple of different items. One with the recycling bin, with access and safety for the workers there. And we're shooting to have several of the items either updated or repaired by the end of February. So hopefully it kind of coincides with the end of phase two. And that will be back on par with the regular fee schedule using the weighted scales and everything. Aside from that, I think most of the main updates were covered by Mr. Peters. Thank you.
Thanks, Justin. We do have one question that I know we were going to wait till Q&A, but you just addressed the completion of phase one. And this question is, now that phase one is complete, can people live on their property in fifth wheels and or travel trailers?
So there is a process for this, and it does require review and approval. We've gotten full fee waivers for most of the director reviews and permits for individuals to do this. I can let Lewis speak on a little more of the details, but now that the hazardous materials have been gone through, it's a point where we can readdress the public health order that restricts access to the properties, and then consider on a case-by-case scenario as to temporary dwelling units such as trailers on the property, as long as they won't impede phase two for those who have opted in and filled out their ROE. We want to make sure that it's not in the way and it's not in a precarious location where trees might be getting removed or what have you.
Great, thanks, Justin. Moving on to our next item, we are going to hear an update on the Mountain View Fire Relief Fund from Debbie Bush. Debbie, thank you for joining us tonight.
Well, thank you for having me. The Victims Relief Fund is being handled by the Northern Mono Chamber of Commerce. We worked in conjunction with the Mammoth Lakes Chamber of Commerce. They did an online donation. We accepted physical donations, mail-in donations from the chamber directly. We are just in the final stages of completing our first disbursement. Probably 2/3 of them went out this weekend. We're still getting addresses for a couple of the ones that didn't. We have a couple of people scheduled to come pick it up, but for the most part, they're pretty much either in the mail or out already. We had 105 disbursements. The way that the committee set the disbursements up after much discussion, an examination of how other fire victim relief funds functioned, which basically there were two main ways. One was an equitable distribution and the other one was by application for bigger projects, bigger needs, et cetera, et cetera. The committee decided, at least with the first round, we would do it as an equitable distribution. They did put some criteria on it. The criteria were that it had to go to the principal occupant at the time of the fire with damage. And that would include renters then, because they would be the principal occupant, not the homeowner. And it did not include second homeowners. That we still have funds left. We meet again tomorrow evening to decide how we are going to proceed from this point. Are they going to do a second round of equitable distribution? Are they going to do an application process now for bigger projects, or exactly where the committee wants to go? We have distributed quite a number of gift cards through the store. Anybody that's asked has been given them. Majority of the ones that we have left are very dedicated, like Home Depot or Lowe's or Kohl's or things like that. We don't have very many cash, basically, gift cards left. We're kind of reserving those for people that have gas needs and things of that nature. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it, unless someone has a question.
And Debbie, donations are still being accepted, is that correct?
Yes, they're still being accepted by Mammoth Lakes Chamber, and they're still being accepted at the store. They have dwindled, almost to a stop at this point in time, but we still do get one here and there. I think we had one yesterday and one today. So that continues to be added to the fund. It's a dedicated fund. It's not held in with the chamber. It's not commingled with the chamber's fund. It's its own bank account and is dealt with in that fashion.
Great. Thank you so much for that update. I'm going to punch it quickly back to Supervisor Peters, who is going to provide us an update and on the discussion of trailers that we've talked about in the past.
Yeah, thank you, Justin, for that. And we were preparing to kind of give this statement last week at the RPAC, but the RPAC became focused with the insurance commissioner and other related items, so we didn't quite get to it. But the idea is to try, as a county, try to facilitate interim housing in any and all ways that we can. So while Cal OES was here assessing the damages from the fire, there was a member of the team from Cal OES who gave us a tip. Basically, talk to the city of Los Angeles. There's a potential for some trailers that they had received. It was directly related to the pandemic, and so there was an inventory of trailers. So shortly after the fire, Mono County connected with the city of LA to discuss the idea of transferring trailers from the existing inventory to support the immediate and extreme lodging needs of the victims impacted by the Mountain View fire. The original intent, funding, and use for these trailers in Los Angeles inventory was to support homelessness programs and services, surrounding the pandemic. Mono County is currently discussing with the city of Los Angeles and other Eastern Sierra local governments to acquire trailers to support these individuals and families experiencing homelessness or extreme need, including those impacted by the Mountain View fire. If the acquisition is successful, the temporary short-term utilization of these trailers would need to remain consistent with the original intent, which means individuals and families experiencing homelessness or individuals and families displaced by the fire and in extreme need of lodging. Recipients would be identified based upon a needs assessment survey and then through additional criteria, that some of which is still not wholly developed. So what needs to happen is, if you're interested in potentially being part of this program, you need to contact social services, Kathy Peterson's team. Locally, Lori Morris or Pat Espinoza can help direct you. And the recipients will then be identified based upon the needs assessment survey and the additional criteria. We really thank you for your patience as working, as you all know, with governments, with the city of Los Angeles, with the attorneys that are, ultimately always involved in everything. Everything has to be done so that it's sustainable and it's we cross all the T's and dot the I's. So stay tuned for more on that to come. We are still actively working with the city and still want to make this a reality so that people can benefit from this resource. So with that, if there's no questions out there on that, I'll pass it back to Justin. And I think we have a special guest from United Policyholders. So Justin, go ahead.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, so we're going to now turn it over to Valerie Brown with United Policyholders. And I did just want to read a brief intro about who United Policyholders is. This is from their website, which I will also share the link in the chat. But United Policyholders was co-founded in 1991 following an urban wildfire that destroyed 3,000 homes in Northern California. In the aftermath of the disaster, the residents struggled with serious and unexpected gaps in their insurance coverage and a claim process that was often adversarial. UP was formed to help level the playing field between insurers and insureds. Donations, foundation grants, and volunteer labor support the organization's work. And so they have been, as you all can imagine, extremely, extremely busy in the last few years, working on a number of recovery efforts within the state. And so we're really happy to have them join us tonight to provide a brief presentation. And I know they'll be around afterwards in the aftermath as we continue down this recovery process. So Valerie Brown, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having us. We're happy to be here. So Justin, am I okay to pull up the PowerPoint?
Please do, yeah.
All right, let me get my screen set here, sorry. So my name is Valerie Brown. I'm the Senior Program Officer for United Policyholders. And, you know, our name simply means that we help people with the insurance claims process. So about UP, as Justin said, you know, we've been operating since '91. We're a nonprofit. We are not funded by insurance companies, strictly by donations and grants. And we work across the country. So while we spend a lot of time in California with wildfires, we do work with all 50 states insurance commissioners. We're currently responding to Oregon, Washington, and Colorado as well at this point. We have the 3 programs, Roadmap to Recovery, which is the one I'm going to talk to you about today briefly. Our Roadmap to Preparedness kind of fed out of those efforts. We were formed in response to disaster and crisis. We realized that we had learned a lot of lessons that would better protect people in the future. So we created that program to help people reduce their risk and improve their resiliency. And then as we found people were struggling, we created this 3rd program, Advocacy in Action, which basically takes everything we've learned in those 2, and then we work with lawmakers and regulators to help improve the safety net of insurance to help people with the insurance claims process. We have a very small but mighty staff of about 12 people that respond across the country. We partner heavily with government and nonprofit partners. And then we have a tremendous volunteer pool from our work, including our survivors from the '91 Oakland wildfires. We have disaster survivors from across the country who, once they recover, pay it forward. So we have a workshop actually called Fired Up Survivors, where they twice a month, they will meet with current survivors and kind of provide their guidance and work on special topics that they have expertise on. And then we also work with consumer-focused professionals in these different fields that share their expertise. I'm going to call this out here. If you don't have this book, if you will send an email to this address, this is who are not comfortable with the website or would just have a book in the hand to read and reference when you need to. This is our handbook, our recovery handbook guide. We have a donor in the San Diego area who gifted about 3,000 of these to us in response to the California wildfires. So we will get this to you if you need it. Please just reach out and let us know that you'd like one. And then this is our website, and I believe Justin's going to put it in the chat. But this is our California 2020 wildfire website link here, which has all of this information, including the videos from the workshops that I'll show you a little bit later. Just a few words that we'd like to share, you know, as you're just in the beginning of this, and just making sure that you know it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. There's lots of tasks that you're juggling now, and there's so many different things to do. and just pace yourself, take your time, don't make decisions that you can't unmake. There's a lot to process, and we want you to make sure that you make the best decisions you can. Our premise is that knowledge equals power, and the more you understand about your insurance benefits, your rights in the state of California, and the value of your loss, the more benefits you're going to get, the smoother your claim will go. And I will point out, the more time you put on your claim, we found the more people get out, are paid out in their claims. And just to talk really briefly about the reality of insurance. So we've all seen the commercials, every sports game that you've watched in over the last weekend, sponsored by Geico, State Farm, everyone who's saying, they're going to be your neighbor, they're going to, be your friend. It's a business transaction. And because it's a business transaction, their goal is to minimize how much they pay out to you. You want to max the dollar that they pay out to you. So just understand that that's there, and your agent might be a friend, but the adjuster handling that claim works in a different part of the house of the company, and they're a trained negotiator. They have you've signed a legal contract. They have expertise that you don't have. And so you want to take your time and educate yourself so that you're able to level that playing field. And this is actually a friend of mine from San Diego in 2007. So I did not lose my home. I live in San Diego, and my neighborhood was burned in the Witch Creek fire in 2007. And I volunteered to run the Volunteer Donation Center. I believe Supervisor Peters was talking about that at the beginning. I stepped up to do that, and 3 years later, I was still working with about 500 people who had lost their homes, trying to get everybody home. And that's actually how I met United Policyholders. I was so impressed with them. I ended up volunteering in what free time I had, and just coming on the staff about 2 years ago to run this Roadmap to Recovery program. We always caution, you want to give your insurance company the chance to do the right thing, but don't be a pushover. And I will say, a lot of people do not have a fight with their insurance company, and we hope yours does. A lot of them go very smoothly from the beginning to the end, but when large dollars are at stake, disputes can arise. And so we want to make sure that you're informed so that you can move forward. The reality of the claims process in California, with the sheer number of claims that happened from the 7,000 fires earlier in the fall, and the fires that continued throughout the year across the West, there are a lot of adjusters from across the country handling claims here. They don't necessarily know California law. You might have your adjuster change multiple times. And so knowing what to expect and what will help you in this process. And as I mentioned earlier, be sure to pace yourself, don't rush. It's really hard because we know you want to get home as quickly as you can. I will say I've got some friends who lost in the Thomas fire in Ventura, and one of the couples had a builder, and they were out the door at the 6-week mark. As soon as their debris was cleared, they started the rebuilding process. They finished exactly 2 weeks out after their neighbor, who started the rebuilding process 6 months later, when they had made all their decisions and felt comfortable with it. And so they came in, the second family came in on time and under budget. The first family came in over budget, and so had to come up with additional dollars to pay for that. So please don't rush into major financial decisions. Take your time to do it right. And understand there's a lot on you. You might feel normal, but the reality is our Fired Up Survivors group calls it fire fog. And they said it's this overlay, and you think you're running normal, but you kind of forget, because you've got the fog, that you're running your normal life, and then several what would be full-time jobs if you hired other people to do them. So be kind to yourself. And the sign of the dotted line, make sure that you you do your research, you vet people. If you're looking at contractors, make sure with the state contract licensing board following that guidance, and make sure that you're making sure people are protecting you. And if you're asked to sign a proof of claim form before you know how much you've really lost, just write undetermined. Don't hesitate to cash the check, but just make sure that you're not closing it out. Resolving debris, I know you guys are moving on that. If you don't have photographs of it, please get photos before it's taken away because you might need them later. One of the big things for us is just making sure you have a complete and current copy of your insurance policy. So you want the dex page, but you want a certified copy if possible, or a full copy, because that declarations page in that packet for renewal is going to cover maybe 10, 12 pages of material, but it's not your full policy. And a lot of times there's details in the full policy that will provide you thousands or even hundreds of dollars if you have the full copy. This is an example of a page, the deck page that just goes through what the different values are here. I'm not going to talk about this stuff in detail because we've got a library that's got webinars we've recorded this year that go into these into a lot of detail. So I don't want to touch on these, but briefly. One of the things we always advocate is that you communicate in writing. You're very clear, you're very concise about what you want, what you need, why you're entitled to it, making sure you know your California rights. We suggest you document everything, take notes on who you talked to, the time, the date you called, what was said. A lot of adjusters tend to pick up the phone and call. And if they're calling, make a note in your diary so you know what was said, but also follow up if you've got their email with an email to them outlining what you understand, and then asking them to correct it if you were mistaken in anything you have. And then the biggest thing is when they tell you that something is not allowed, ask them to show you where that is in your policy. Because again, you've got a lot of adjusters from out of state who don't necessarily know what your policy says in the state of California. So you want to make sure that you are referencing precisely in your policy where it says what they're telling you that the expectations are. The claims diary, I've already touched on this. It's just a way to keep you organized. Paper trail is essential though. Part of it's just confirming you're cooperating. You're reminding them about what's going on. You can outline very specific things that they haven't done, giving them reasonable, specific time frame to comply. The state of California gives you a certain number of business days that they have to respond by for every communication. And so you want to be sure you're tracking that as well. And that's part of your paper trail. And if you find you need additional help in the future, either going to the Department of Insurance with a request for assistance or with a professional, having that paper trail is going to be key to helping you move this forward. Last little bit of guidance here on interacting with your insurance company. We always recommend you be politely assertive. If you're having a bad day with them, save it for a friend when you get off the phone, but just understand that those adjusters don't necessarily have a lot of freedom to make changes and things. And so venting on them just gets them cranky with you. So save the venting for elsewhere and just be politely asserting what you need to have happen. Insurance lingo, it is a foreign language. I'll be honest, it took me about 3 years to figure it out. You do have the buckets of coverage, coverage A, which is typically the dwelling, B, C, ACV is actual cash value. Scope of loss is something you're going to hear about very soon. We have actually a workshop on that on this Saturday if anyone wants. I'll have that information up in a minute. We always recommend that you connect with other people in your community. It's a great source of information about rebuilding resources, referrals, and just having somebody who understands where you are and what you're going through. Scams are very common. So again, please be very careful with that. Vet your resources, ask for those referrals. And if you don't have the capacity to follow up, ask a friend to make those calls for you and vet those. Proving your loss, the biggest thing, especially when you're getting into contents, but a lot of it's just what type of house you had and what the finishings and fixtures were. So photos from friends and family, pre and post, any public records you've got, home purchase documents, if you can get those from your lender or the mortgage broker, Zillow, any of those resources, and then networking with your neighbors to share ideas on that. This is the guidelines that I mentioned earlier about California's claim handling, the Fair Claims Settlement Practices Act. Sorry, I'm butchering that. They've got 15 business days to respond to communications. It could be an email, letter, or phone call, but they have to respond then. Every time you submit a request for payment, they have 40 days to pay or deny it. And if they are unable to make a decision, they must send a letter. And then how they have, just send this letter to them every 30 days to keep this moving. Best practices, I feel like I'm a broken record here, but always try to get it in writing. If you don't have it in writing, put it to them in writing. Keep it professional, be concise and to the point, proper grammar, punctuation, respond promptly to letters and reasonable requests, and then avoiding venting to them. California Department of Insurance, if you're having issues or you have a question and you're not getting help from your adjuster that helps you with that, they're a great resource for you. You can call them, you can go online. And if you do file a request for assistance, just to note, that is, the insurance companies are not allowed to use that punitively against you. So, and if adjuster tells you they will, that's actually something to report directly back to the Department of Insurance because it's not allowed in California. Just a quick thank you to our funders. Here's the upcoming events we have, and just talk about our recovery. Obviously, it's on post-disaster insurance claims process people. We do have people without insurance who are planning to rebuild and participate as well. We do a lot of things that are talking about the rebuild and recovery process. So please, if you feel any of these are helpful to you, always feel free to join them. They are all online. You can register at the www.uphelp.org/R2R. You can register for any of these there. They are also recorded. So if you're going to miss one, you can email that info receive that information, and we'll share that video with you. And let's see. We've actually been running this series. We began this in September with the first wave of fires we had in California. And so these topics have already been covered. And you are welcome to go back and see any of those videos. If you have any questions about them, we do. Let me go back here. These Q&As that we have, we offer them on Wednesdays at 5:30. We do them at least twice a month for the 2020 California fires. So if you have any questions about your policy, it's a chance to get individual questions answered. And so I wanted to make sure I share that with you. And then the workshops we've had, and we will be cycling through all of these again, except the how to read and understand your policy, because I don't think anybody wants to sit through 90 minutes of learning how to read an insurance policy more than once. But the others we tackle again and again, and we'll be focusing a lot on underinsurance, the rebuilding process, working with your lender and that stuff as we move into the 2021 year. So let me stop sharing. And I will be on to the end. So Justin, I can hang around for any questions there are later, because I know you have more to do.
That would be great. Thank you, Valerie. Appreciate that presentation. This is recording and it is going to be available online following this. So I would imagine it would be okay if I were to also share your PowerPoint as a link. Okay, great. I will plan to do that on our portal and then include it in an upcoming email. Okay, that being said, I think we're going to move on to Q&A. And we do have Sheriff Ingrid Baran has joined the panel as well, and she's going to address this first question that we have on Zoom, which is what is happening about security for the properties that are affected? Looting is still happening. And Sheriff Baran, I don't know if you're still on mute.
Sorry, needed to shut the door because my dog is barking, and I am not camera ready, so you guys can just look at that picture. As for looting, we did get a report today of a car casing the area. We haven't had many other reports of looting. So we do regularly patrol the area, as we are aware that that is a potential. But if there has been an actual case of looting or you have property that is taken, please call the sheriff's office, call 911 if there's somebody currently there, or call our non-emergency number, which is 760-932-7549, and then pick the appropriate option, which doesn't come to me right now. But let us know so that we can get out there and we can be on top of it. We did get a call about a car that was driving through the area today, and we are regularly patrolling out there. But we need we need your cooperation in telling us what's going on. And if something has been stolen, file a report with us. We will easily take a report. You'll need that for your insurance company anyway, but it's for us so that we know what's going on and that we can follow up on it and hopefully catch whoever is engaged in that terrible activity.
Justin, can I just mention something? One of the great things about Mono County is how intimate and small we are, and how we do get the information, try to the right people at the right time. And in this case, Sheriff Braun just responded to a quick text when I saw this question and stopped whatever she was doing, logged in to be here to answer these questions. And over the weekend, I had also received a complaint about a suspicious car, and I immediately texted one of the deputies that I know who relayed the information of what should be done at the time. So, and basically we could identify that there was a sheriff deputy in the area up there, and they were able to go and respond. But it's important, like the sheriff said, just treat anything that's suspicious, like call 911 or call the sheriff directly. That is the best way to get a initial quick response. And if taking pictures is a way to do it, I don't recommend really confronting people directly. I think getting some type of evidence or something that the sheriffs can follow up on, which they do and will do, is the most prudent way to go about this. And that's sort of neighbors helping neighbors. So if you happen to be driving down East Side Lane or up Camp Antelope and you see something suspicious, just report it. Even if it's not, at least it gets addressed. So thank you, Sheriff Braun, for jumping onto this. And I'll turn it back to Justin for more questions.
Thank
Justin,
you.
if I can for just a second, tagging on to what Supervisor Peters said, that is exactly what we are, and especially up there. We are a small community and everybody knows everybody, and you know who should be driving through your neighborhood and who shouldn't be driving through your neighborhood. So keep an eye out for that. If you are still there, if you see a car, take a picture of the license plate. License plates are great. They give us something to follow up on. We also do have text to 911. It's kind of not well known, but you can text 911 and say that something's going on, and that will go to our dispatch just like a 911 call would. So we have that opportunity. We are aware that this is a potential, but we need information and evidence. So whatever you see, tell us.
Great. Thank you, Sheriff Braun. We have a Facebook question. I was told today that all phone service have been restored in Walker, but I still don't have phone or internet. I am in almost daily contact with Frontier. Can someone please help me?
So I have also been in contact with Frontier, and they have told me that twice now that everything has been reestablished to existing residences. I've given them this woman's address and they're waiting to hear confirmation back. So that's on the phone service. The internet is Race Communications, and we're hearing that they're continuing to work on removing the burned infrastructure and replacing it in the area. And so we're continuing to work, getting different information from them than from this resident. So we're continuing to work through that.
Thank you, Mary. Is any agency involved in testing for soil contamination? If so, who is it and how do we get it?
Yeah, this is Louis Molina. I will answer that one. As part of the phase 2 cleanup process, soil sampling will be done. So I don't know if that's what the question is about, but there will be soil analyses done on the properties that were burned. There's going to be some background samples that will be done in the area, in areas that weren't burned, outside of the structures, so that they can have a good baseline of what the occurring levels of different naturally occurring or otherwise contamination would be in the general area. So yes, soil sampling will be done as part of the Cal Recycle cleanup. They're contractors. That's part of their charge to be doing that. They'll sample prior to, as I said, prior to the debris removal. And then once they remove all the debris, they will do confirmation samples on the properties to make sure that the contamination meets their cleanup standards. So hopefully that answers the question.
Great, thanks, Louis. That is all the open questions on both the Zoom and Facebook. Were there any additional comments? Supervisor Peters, I know you wanted to maybe say something else.
Yes. So one concern that came up over the weekend when I was up in Antelope Valley was the concern over all of the basically dust, soil kind of just that's been created by the wind blowing the finest particles of the fire into drifts and just areas throughout the valley. And when there has been when the wind is picked up and it started stirring this up, there's concerns from some community members about, the level of toxicity in it, what mitigations potentially could, if any, be done to revegetate some of the areas that have been sort of just become barren. And I know individual property owners are interested in resources, and there are lots of areas, ditches and things along the right-of-way, the East Side Lane right-of-way, that potentially we, with our ag commissioner, we've gotten reports over the years of invasive species. Forget what the main one was called, something milkweed or something like that, maybe. So is there a way for us to work collaboratively with the community, the federal land agencies, state land agencies, tribal entities to just start thinking about this? And especially now that we're in like a sort of drought-driven winter, that we don't ignore this. And I know that they're bringing water trucks when they're doing the debris removal part of it. But once all that debris is removed from the fire, that'll again have there'll be an element of dust and dirt and things that can just be blown all around that valley. As everyone knows, the prevailing winds, are pretty consistent, especially in the summer. They kick up in the afternoon. And so moving forward, I'm just asking that we keep this as a concern and look at potential mitigation efforts and how we can work together with the community to hopefully mitigate it.
Thank you, Supervisor. A couple other questions have come in. Louis, it looks like this one's probably for you. Do we need to participate in phase 2 in order to be eligible for soil testing?
You would need to be in phase 2 to sign up for their contractors that are doing the soil testing. Yes, if that doesn't mean that you could not contract with an approved consultant engineering firm who can run those same analyses for you. I would recommend that you hold off and see what the results are from the background samples that CalRecycle and their contractors will be looking at, so that you know what you should be looking for. It's primarily metals, heavy metals, things of that nature that you would be concerned about on your property. So, find out what the list of constituents that they're going to be testing for, so you can talk to a consultant and you can do the same thing. Obviously, you can test for whatever you want, but that would give you a good baseline of what you want to look for. So yes, you can do it, but it will be on your own, at your own cost to have that done.
Thank you. Is there any discussion about hydro seeding?
I'll answer that too. There's discussion in terms of the general cleanup. That's one of the erosion methods that they, or anti-erosion methods that they would be putting in place for erosion control, is hydro seeding. Doesn't mean they're going to do it, but that's one of the things that they list as a measure. So that will potentially be conducted some hydroseeding around the burn sites. Obviously, we're talking, what, thousands of acres there of land that is not going to be hydroseeded. So it will be limited. But however, I'm going to look into and see, because I had this question before from someone else, do I have any contacts for hydroseeding companies or anything like that? I don't, but I will, I'll check with Cal Recycle and get some more information on that. Maybe I'll have some more information on home property owners who might want to have some of that done on their own. In addition, perhaps, to what Cal Recycle would do, you might hire your own company to come out and do some of that as well to get better coverage.
Great, thanks, Louis.
I'll have another question while we have time. Valerie, what is your recommendation or experience when it comes to insurance companies requesting what I'm going to call, these are my words, a cumbersome, onerous content list for their homes? Now, we have been named as a area zip code that is going to have a moratorium on non-renewals, and I'm trying to look, as we're talking, I'm trying to look up the name of the bill, but Commissioner Lara came on our Regional Planning Advisory Committee meeting last week, and I want to believe that he mentioned something about this and was saying that you don't need to do that in order to recover the losses of the contents.
It really depends on what's in, typically it depends on what's included in your policy. Now I think he's talking about the new bill the new bill that's being passed. So I don't know how that's going to impact the current for people in November. But as far as contents go, because it's not typically spelled out in the policy, it's whatever the process is for the consumer and that the adjuster shares. So Commissioner Lara had asked for it to be waived. Some insurance companies have done that. Some have. He also asked for advances to be given with no inventory requirement. A lot of the insurance companies have met that requirement. But it's not really a requirement. It's a suggestion, a very strong suggestion on his part. So to get the additional coverage, there is, typically unless you've got, you can make the argument for you're underinsured and there's reasons, you've got valid reasons for why it shouldn't be required. And you can convince them to waive that because you're going to be underinsured. Most of them do require it. I will say on our website, we have some sample ones. The contents inventory webinar that we did, I think it was the end of November, and then we'll be doing again. We ended up giving people pricing and everything for 4 rooms in the house. So all the consumables like your kitchen, everything you would have had in there, sample things from, equipping a home office, things like that. So we've tried to figure out how to make it as less painful as possible, but we've got sample letters on our website that outline how to request that they waive the requirement, what your hardship is. So we've got the samples that other survivors have used successfully. So you could try those. We can provide you materials. And then I think we've got Commissioner Lara coming up on the event, and I'll check and see what that new regulation meant. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. Anybody else have any questions or want to bring up anything? Any new topics?
Debbie Bush did remind me, for those interested, that Race Communications has set up a free hotspot at the Walker General Store for anyone who needs internet access while they are restoring service.
Okay, and one housekeeping item. Next Monday is a holiday, and we've also had, I don't know, probably about 50% drop in in attendance this week. So I think we're gonna pause for a week and come back 2 weeks from today, which is the 25th, and hold our next community meeting on the 25th. But again, anything that comes up between now and then, please don't hesitate to reach out. We're here to help. And there are a couple of minutes left. And I don't know if Louis, you want to, I know there's still some questions about folks wanting to just get going, not wait for the state to do phase 2. But just if you can talk about, if you went off on your own, the ability or lack thereof to opt back in, just a little bit of brief high-level overview on what it means to
Sure.
to opt in with an ROE or not.
Yes, if you have, on the question of whether or not you can opt in after you've started your own debris removal, no, you cannot. So if you, somewhere down the line decide that you hire a contractor to get started, you're going to need to continue that process. So I guess the recommendation would be, if you're not sure, just hold off until you are sure. Don't start removing anything. If you do plan on doing the debris removal on your own, you'll need to hire a property licensed contractor to do so. You need to follow the same protocol that the CalRecycle contractors will be implementing. I have a basic scope of work that I'll be happy to email to anybody, so you know what that looks like. And you have to have contractors that have the hazardous waste certifications to be able to remove the debris and to be able to haul it. So it's not just something that you can hire your brother's buddy to come and do this stuff. It has to be done properly by properly licensed contractors. So again, feel free to reach out to me. I can get you information on what that looks like, what you need to do, the protocol, and we can go from there. But don't start the debris removal process with the idea that you're going to opt in at some later date, because the state has indicated to me that once you've started, they will not accept your site for cleanup under their program.
And Louis, one more thing, I think, I apologize if we did mention it, but I knew we wanted to reiterate, was the clearing up some of the confusion about the access to property for the number of years on the ROE form.
I'm sorry, about the access to the property?
Yeah, we had talked about, there are some concerns about the ROE form, which states there's access to properties for a certain length of time.
For a certain length of time, yeah. I think it's that 36 month that has gotten people really sideways. I was told by the state that that's just, standard language that they put on these ROEs that went out to 22 different counties for these debris removal programs. It just should be understood that this is an either or. Doesn't mean that the county is going to have, or the state's going to have access to your property when this debris removal program is completed. So the 36 months, my understanding is, it just basically, it's a deadline for them to be able to complete this project. If it's not started within 3 years, obviously this ROE is moot. It's defunct. So that's what it's meant, I believe, is what that 36 months is put in there for. Just keep in mind that, we're going to get going on this thing in the next couple of weeks, the next few weeks. They will start this debris removal program, and they'll be completed within a couple of months. So that once it's completed, that 36 months, it doesn't mean anything. When it's completed, it's completed.
Okay, thank you, Louis. We have a hard out at 6 p.m. and it's 6 p.m. So be well, and we will see you in 2 weeks. Thank you, everyone, for participating. And that's it for tonight.